Very good afternoon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Time to Wind Down. I am Andy Coppin, the storyteller, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Gerard Perold and Michelle Cheen. Gerard, do you want to say a few words?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Gerard from Perold Wine Cellar, and I'm sitting here in my Cafe Deli wine shop in the village in Chittermendip in Somerset. And I just want to say welcome to this another lovely chat this afternoon. We will have some wine and we'll have some fun. So fantastic. So that's all from me. Over to you, Michelle.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm up in Derbyshire, so we're kind of covering the whole country or the whole of the UK today. I'm just happy to be here to see Tim and Vaughan again and to meet Joe and James and to listen to some music and drink wine and talk about stories and South Africa.
Fantastic.
You saw me pop off screen and come back. This is the joys of doing these virtual events, because I've just heard my two teenagers who are on holiday and they were both having strong conversations with each other. So I just went and closed some doors. So Gerard, looking at the background, this wonderful image that you sent me that I'm using, wonderful backdrop, but no surprise as to who our guests are today. But as you invited both our wine guests and our music guests, I thought it would be a great opportunity for you to introduce and welcome both of them, please.
All right, this is quite a hard one to start off. Do we start with music or do we start with wine? And we've got a great saying on Time to Wind Down. What goes with wine, Michelle?
Music.
So, yeah, well, I will start off with the wine today. Our lovely guest today is Tim and Vaughan from Seven Springs Vineyard. So Tim and Vaughan is over here in the UK with us. This is where they live. But their vineyard is in the beautiful area in South Africa called Yemen and Arde. A little bit more about that later. Our wonderful musicians we have with us here is Joe and James, Edenbay acoustic music, and I'm sure we will find out more about them later on and listening to a few tracks or tunes, depends on how you see it, I suppose. So that's our guest. So welcome.
Thank you.
Gerard, I got a question first of all. How did you meet Tim and Vaughan?
Well, that's a very interesting story, actually. About 5 years ago now, actually, I was looking to set up my own business, and I've got a little bit of a heritage in the wine industry in South Africa, and I thought, well, why not doing a little bit with that and trying to sell some South African wines over in the UK. So I've done a bit of research, searching up online for a few wineries. I came up about a winery called Painted Wolf Wines, or Painted Wolf Wines Company, and I contacted this guy called Jeremy, and he said to me, I can't work direct with him, but he put me in touch with North South Wines, and they are the importer. They import from all over the world, but they'll have a few people they work with from South Africa, and Painted Wolf was one of them. And so I contacted North South Wines, and I spoke to a guy called James, that's the regional manager here in the area. And he said to me, you know what, you should meet Tim and Vaughan from Seven Springs. They live over here in the UK. I'm bringing them down. Let us get together and meet. Now, earlier on, I said about sitting in my cafe or shop. At the time, of course, this wasn't my property. I've only been here for the last year and 3 months or something like that. I live in the village. So this is the place where I actually met Tim and Vaughan for the first time. We came in here, and Tim and Vaughan started to pull out some beautiful Seven Springs wines. And we looked around, we asked the owner, do you have any wine glasses? And they didn't have any. And Tim said, don't worry, this wine tastes so wonderful, we can just drink it out of coffee cups. But I said, no, I'm a man of properness. Let's go and get, as you would know, Andy, let's go and get some wine glasses. So over the road, I toddled, and I came back with a couple of glasses, and they started to pour me a wine. And if I correctly remember, think this must be from that first vintage I met you, 2013 Sauvignon
Right.
Blanc.
Yeah.
And when I think it's actually born, we poured the glass, and when I swirled it and I smelled the wine, it straight away took me like that back to Kleinmond. Now, if you don't know what Kleinmond is, it's a small little town up the coast from the Cape in South Africa, in the Cape province. And there's that faint boss vegetation down in the coast there that grows there, and it definitely just took me back. And funny enough, at that point, I didn't know where the vineyard was, and it's not too far from Kleinmond. And to have smelled it in the wine, it was fantastic. And you know what? After speaking to Tim and Vaughan that day, I walked back over the road and I said to my wife, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my wine business. So that's when I met Tim and Vaughan.
Amazing. Now, I'm actually just looking at Tim's glass. And I know we were talking about this just briefly, but so clean and polished. Vaughan, you were mentioning something about glasses. So what is the rule in your house when it comes to wine glasses?
The rule is mine's always bigger than his. Yeah, technically I try and get the right shape for the right wine, but I'm not usually very good. I just go for the first one I can find in the cupboard.
We don't have that many glasses, come on.
Yeah, be careful when you wash them up. So that's about as technical as I know that places like Riedel go into a whole science. They've even designed glasses for Coca-Cola, I believe. I think the only thing is wine glasses for me have to have a good balance. I don't like chunky glasses. Don't like glasses with a thick rim around the top. Don't like wine glasses that are too heavy. Don't like wine glasses that break too easily either. So when you're looking at something like, what are the really skinny ones we've got?
Oh, the Zalto.
Zalto scare me to death.
Most of these glasses we were given,
Yeah.
the Zalto ones were a present, and they're like, these are for Pinot Noir, and they're almost like tulip-shaped goldfish bowls.
Yeah, seriously scary.
Yeah.
But no, we're fairly relaxed about wine glasses.
So this sort of thing is very, very good. This sort of glass is very good for red wines such as Cabernet Sauvignon or Syrah Shiraz and stuff like that. Pinot Noir glasses tend to be a slightly different shape. But to be honest, you know, Riedel and some of the glass manufacturers make glasses that are specific to certain varietals. But if you stick to the basics and have a glass like this for red wines and maybe a smaller glass of a similar shape for white wines, you can't go far wrong. I wouldn't drink out of jam jars or the mugs that Gerard was talking about. And I can't remember ever saying that. But I have consumed wines. I have consumed wines before out of, I must say, out of,
that's a few years ago.
I want to quickly go to Michelle, because Michelle, whereabouts is Seven Springs? I know you are our research guru when it comes to knowing everything about where the wine estates are. Maybe you can share for our audience, where is?
Well, it's in a valley, in between Caledon, really, from Caledon down to Hermanus. It is called the Yemen Valley for a reason, and I'm going to ask some questions later to see if Tim and Vaughan knows this. I know this, but yeah, it's up the road, about 27 kilometers from Hermanus, about. And there's quite a few. I'm not sure how many. I was looking. All they say is top 10 or top 6, but there's quite a few wine farms in that little stretch. There's Hamilton Russell, there's what's the Finlayson, Bouchard Finlayson. They're the older ones, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Seven Springs is in a area where it's newish, isn't it, compared to those guys? Yeah.
You know, Tim and Vaughan, a question that gets asked of me as a South African, especially when it's friends that travel to South Africa on holiday from England or Europe, or they always have a go at me, and they say, why are you living in the UK when South Africa is so amazing? So I'm intrigued as well, because you love South Africa. you have your wine estate there. How often do you spend your time in South Africa?
Okay, first of all, I wouldn't call it a wine estate. We only have like 12 hectares, which is like 30 acres. So it's more like a postage stamp than a football pitch. No, it's a wine farm. So wine estate sounds pretty grand. Let's take it back a few years. 1994, 1995. Vaughan and I went and we lived actually for 6 months in a place called Nelspruit, which is near the Kruger National Park. Nothing to do with wine, nowhere near an area that could make wine. We were going to buy a small cleaning business. That's my business in the UK. We have a cleaning business over here, but to cut a long story short, we took our 2 daughters over. They were like 9 and 12. We were going to buy this small cleaning business. The guy turned out to be a crook, but he was from Wolverhampton in England, so he was not South African. So I'm not going to sort of. And he started changing all the criteria for buying the business when we were over there. So we spent 6 months, 1994, 1995, which was the summer months in Nelspruit. And that's where our love of South Africa came from. We spent a lot of time in the Kruger Park. We still go back there each year, but so that's where the connection with South Africa came from. 2005 was our 25th wedding anniversary. We spent 3 weeks in the Cape, and sort of Vaughan said, if you're still interested in doing something in the wine industry or with wine, let's just have a look and see if there's anything. And we went down to Hermanus for 2 days, went to the 2 places Michelle talked about, Hamilton, Russell and Bouchard Finlayson, to taste the wines. And Vaughan said, if we're going to do anything, this would be the perfect spot.
Yeah, we choose to live in the UK. We're both Brit, and it's quite trendy to talk down about where you're from and where you live, and it's quite trendy to aspire to live somewhere else. But I actually think England's got a lot going for it. I really like our home. This is where we live. But that doesn't mean we don't love South Africa as well. And we get the opportunity to go sort of 2 to 3 months every year when it's not full of COVID. And, you know, we appreciate missing the UK in January, February and March, and appreciating the sunshine over there. But you know what? Every time we arrive in South Africa, or every time we arrive home, you get a new appreciation of where you are. And it's about just being comfortable where you are. The other advantage in the UK, you get electricity 24/7.
Let's not mention Eskom, okay?
No. Sorry, guys.
Let's stay positive.
Yeah.
So Tim and Vaughan, you can tell us a little bit when you found this perfect spot where you're going to grow your grapes. Originally, you didn't buy a wine farm. Explain a little bit.
Well, basically, we drove up the Hemel and Ardagh Valley Road, which is, has been said, is about 3 kilometers out of Hermanus. So the road starts there. And we drove up probably about as far as Sumer Ridge, because back then in 2006,
Sumer Ridge is another wine farm.
The tar ran out and it became a dirt road. So that's where most people turned around and came back. But, you know, it's just such a beautiful road. So I said to Tim, I thought I'd slow him down a bit and put a few obstacles in his way, and said, if you ever want to do wine, that's the place to do it. But actually, it only took him about 2 months to find some land that was for sale. It did have cows on it. It was just grazing land.
It was rough land.
But it had temperature loggers on it, and they had analysed the soil. So it came with a pedigree. So we, having seen it or been up that road initially in October, we then went back in the January and saw it. And then we finalised the deal and bought it in July. And we still only own that piece of land.
That was July 2006.
Yeah, we don't have any house. We don't have, the winery is on a rented farm. So, you know, whilst we're very compact boutique and, I don't know, niche.
Boutique sounds good.
Yeah, boutique, yeah. We're not a wine estate. And we don't have a house over there either. So we just stay in Airbnb locally. And yeah. So that's how we found it, really.
We didn't have enough money to build all of those. No, the important thing was to get the vineyard sorted, make sure we could make wines, and we did all this from scratch. So, you know, we didn't have a clue how to make wines. We knew we could YouTube it and Google it and find out the basics, but
We decided to employ a winemaker
we
instead.
decided to put it to grow the grapes, and so we planted 8.5 hectares of grapes, vines. So we planted in 2007, we planted Syrah or Shiraz, which is this stuff, and Chardonnay. And then in 2008, the year after, we planted Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blanc, which is the stuff that Gerard is consuming. Unless he's put Ribena in the glass and he's cheating.
No, not when it comes to Seven Springs wines.
So we found somebody that could plant the vines for us and manage the vineyard. So that was the starting point.
That's fantastic. I love the word boutique, actually. I mean, I still regard, I'd probably still say, you know, I always think of wine farms and wine estates compared to the amount of land we have here in the UK. I know Gerard and I and Michelle have been talking about, or wouldn't it be nice to grow pinotage grapevines? I know, Gerard, you got one going. How is your little plant, may I ask?
Well, it still looks a little bit sad at the moment. So yeah, as spring get a bit warmer, we'll start seeing some shoots coming out, and it will flourish again this year, I'm sure. So yeah. Now,
I know Michelle's dying to ask questions, because what we started to do with the last Time to Wind Down session is we have a little quiz. So Michelle, I'm going to hand back to you, and maybe you can share with our guests the idea around the quiz. And yeah, maybe you can throw a few questions and see if they can actually answer them.
Well, it's easy questions. It's not tricky. And it's the first time that we have two guests. We're lucky to combine wine and music this time. So I've got 3 questions for each of you. And I think I'm just going to go to Joe and James first today. And I'm going to ask them, who is your favorite South African musicians or music influence?
Well, I've got to speak for James here. I need to just explain to you what the relationship is.
Yes.
I'm from Cape Town in South Africa.
Yeah.
I've been over here for 3.5 years. And James is married to my sister's wife. So we are, so they, my in-laws moved over about 20 years ago.
Your wife's sister.
Your wife. Yeah, I was trying to understand that one.
Yeah.
This is not good.
That's a very common South African mistake.
Yeah. So that's another story. So I'm South African and James is actually British. We live in the Cotswolds, Oxfordshire area.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the pluses for me coming over was that James and I both share a passion for playing guitar as a hobby. We both have day jobs. Whilst I have played some music for James, South African music, and I'll let him answer if he has someone, but I'd say for me, a South African artist that I really enjoyed growing up and had the privilege of seeing him live in the Alma Cafe in Rosebank in Cape Town is a guy by the name of Robin Old. And he did songs like Baby, You're So Good to Me, or You Are Every Woman. He was top of the pops in the 80s, and so I'd say I really enjoyed his music. It set the kind of trend for the style that I like.
Now you see, now you're sending me down a whole rabbit hole again, and I have to go and search Robin Holt and
no, it's great. But I mean, Johnny Clegg is one of my favorite all-time South African musicians, and there's also some more current stuff that's been done, by some Afrikaans musicians as well, which I quite like. But Robin Old is a good music.
Okay. Yeah. And he's also acoustic guitar, singing, that kind of.
He had a bit of a rock band, but
okay.
When I saw him, he did a solo acoustic so if you know the Bryan Adams style of music, I'd say it's pretty similar to that.
Yeah.
And if you've ever heard the Bryan Adams unplugged studio MTV session. It's that kind of music. So I think when you play an acoustic guitar, you really showcase talent because it's a lot harder work than an electric. So to see Robin Old doing that was quite special.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll be looking up Robin Holt now.
Yeah.
And James, do you have any South African music preferences, maybe, or interest or knowledge?
No, I have to admit my ignorance on that. So
that's okay. We'll teach you.
I'll agree with Joe, and that'll be the answer for both of us.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll let you off lightly this time only. Okay, so now Tim and Vaughan, what is your favorite South African wine other than Seven Springs?
We don't have one. Yes, we have many.
There's so many. It's really hard to tell. I
think there's a lot of diplomacy happening.
No,
there's not a lot of
I think it's a hard choice.
Look,
I think
we love a lot of South African Chenin Blancs, and I couldn't name one Chenin Blanc that. I mean, Ken Forrester is a friend of ours who makes the FMC, or
I was actually going to say FMC,
and that was one of our first expressions of South African Blanc. But there are many more that are.
I would say, some of the reds from Brewer Raats, the Raats family vineyards. I love some of his reds. But sometimes it's associated by the people that we've met, because the winemakers over there are such generous souls, and they're so kind and supportive. That's one of the reasons why we make wine in South Africa. As a Brit, I don't think I could imagine making wine in France. But the South Africans have opened their arms to us and their hearts, and they really make us feel very welcome. So, and it is people like Brewer Raats and Ken Forrester,
Bayers
Truter, some of the great and the good people there. So, I mean,
look, the South African is making some of the world's best wines, and it's our wines aren't there at the moment. They're very good wines, but people like Molyneux are making exceptional wines. A guy called Chris Alheat, who's based in the Hemelanada Road, but Chris buys his wines from or gets his grapes from remote vineyards, but gets scores of like 96, 97, 98 out of 100, which is almost impossible. I mean, that's like.
Well, someone was telling me about Alheat wines yesterday at the North and South wine tasting. A guy from Lancaster Wines, and he was telling me he used the word cult wine, so I'm not sure where that came from, which was very interesting because I've never heard of them. And then obviously,
cult wines, I guess, the very low yielding vineyards. Price is quite high, like 30 or 40 pound a bottle, but you're talking about something exceptional. So somebody would say, look, I'll only pay £5 for a bottle of wine, wouldn't probably, but it's like, I guess the difference between a Rolls Royce and I don't know, sort of a basic Vauxhall or something like that. You're talking about something that gets you from A to B, but totally different.
Yeah, I mean, that the diversity of the wine production in South Africa is amazing. And so you could name any wine almost in the world, and we could say, well, we had a really great one in wherever and with somebody.
But no, it's
an exciting production.
And our favorite, probably one of our favorite bands in South Africa is Ladysmith Black Mambazo. I mean, they go many years.
Classic.
But the thing is, also they do Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, which we quite resonate with.
I love what you just said about you name the wine and you can recall the memories. Of the conversations and the people that were with you. And I mean, it's a big part of what the ethos is of this this being Time to Wind Down. It's celebrating South African wines, South African music, South African foods, and of course the people from the country.
It's more about the people.
What? Sorry?
It's more about the people. The thing is, I think wine is great, food is great,
And
but-
company and music,
but-
just put it all together, it's magic.
So 3 weeks ago, we were braaiing in the Kruger National Park with friends, with bottles of wine.
Yeah, well, actually, we spoilt ourselves and took one of our magnums of Syrah.
Oh,
And
nice.
suddenly there was people from next door's Rondavel who suddenly kind of came around. But as they'd shown us where the leopard was, the other side of the river, we felt obliged to share the Syrah.
And that's a good exchange, I think.
Definitely. Yeah.
Wow. Michelle, that was one question. Moving right along.
I wonder if it isn't time for some music, maybe.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
Before we do that, why don't we just, do we have another question for Joe and James?
We do, of course we do. So I'm not sure how well you guys know South African wine, or pinotage specifically, because a lot of our mission in the world is to kind of spread the story of, well, Abram Isaac-Perold and pinotage and all that. So as you might not know, Abram Isaac-Perold was Gerard's great-grandfather,
Yes.
and he created pinotage. Now, I wonder if you know where the name of pinotage came from.
I do. So interesting enough, I used to have a tourism business in South Africa, and one of the parts of tour guiding was to have a very basic understanding of how wine is made, and it was always a very proud moment when myself would say to the guests, it's a sort of infusion of Pinot Noir and a Hermitage cultivar. So that's something I'll never forget. So actually, when the introduction was made to Gerard, I was thinking, what a small world it is, and how fantastic to meet someone related to the inventor, if you like, or the creator of that fantastic cultivar. So
Yeah, and knowing the story. I mean, not a lot of people know that Hermitage is Cinsault, or what it was called, but the French didn't want that name used because the Hermitage was connected to the area. I hope I'm speaking the right thing. I'm just remembering now.
Well, yeah, and it's also the higher growing grapes, the higher quality in Hermitage in France. So
yes,
and then when we use Hermitage, and then there was there's something else we wanted to do. I think was making sparkling wine or something like that. And because we wanted to do that and use that methods, they said, but we can't use Hermitage in South Africa, so we call it Cinsault. I think that is the story. But
sorry, but there's an area in Swellendam, or just in the mountain in Swellendam, that's called Hermitage. Or
that's correct.
Hermitage
Yes,
is what,
yeah, I saw that one day and I thought, well, how cool will it be to have a wine farm there?
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful places
pinotage
in the world. I promise you, it's in the mountain. And if you hike a little bit and you're a local, then you know where to go, and you can climb up the river, over the boulders, these white river. Oh, it's gorgeous, into the mountains.
Yeah. So Joe, I thought of before when we came out with the questions, I thought you might know it because you're a Cape Town man. But it will be quite, before we play music, it will be quite nice to hear a little bit of your backstory from South Africa and why you're here, and maybe what did you do? Well, we know now what you did in South Africa, but yeah.
So I think, sadly, I'm grouped with the sort of mass exodus of South Africans at the moment. Tim joked earlier about Eskom, and Vaughan mentioned about no electricity. I think running your own business in South Africa is quite challenging, and the infrastructure just seems to be making it less appealing to stay there, especially when you've got kids. So I came from an oil industry background, left that about 20 years ago, tried my hand at running a tourism business, which went pretty well. I had two brands. One was called Southern Cape Golf Tours. So we used to travel the Southern Cape to a lot of the areas that you talk about, Hemel and Arder, Caledon. We used to take people along the garden route. play golf, drink wine, and then send them on safari, basically heaven in South Africa. And then the other brand dealt with large conferences and events. And we were one of the key organizers of the International Mining in Derby. So it was a very big event for us. But at the end of the day, my kids are getting older, and 2 years ago was the first time they'd ever really walked to school. It was almost like releasing an animal back into the wild, because I came downstairs and they were sitting in the lounge with their suitcases on their back. I said, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "No, well, we're waiting for a lift." I said, "No, here you walk to school." So they walked out the front door, and every 10 meters they stopped and looked back, and is this okay? So just letting them enjoy. As Vaughan said, the UK is actually a wonderful place to live. You can adapt to the weather, but the freedom and the independence that I've seen my kids develop over the last 2.5 years has been quite fantastic. Now I'm in the renewables industry, selling heat pumps, which we've never heard of in South Africa because we don't need heat pumps. So that's what we're all doing over here.
But
where were you based? Sorry, Gerard.
So I live in a small town called Whitney, which is about 17 miles from Oxford. So in the Oxfordshire area.
And in South Africa?
In South Africa, I lived in Cape Town. Okay. Which was always one of the best places to live, because you had, you drive 1 hour in any direction, except south, of course, because of the water. But you end up in the Winelands or in Hermanus or up the west coast, Langebaan. So really, but I had lived all over South Africa. So I was born in Johannesburg, grew up in Port Elizabeth, and then settled in Cape Town. Seen, I think, the best of the country. Lived in Durban for a couple of years as well. So
fantastic. Well, gentlemen, the stage is yours. Can't wait to hear your song.
Thank you.
This is gonna take a long time, and I wonder what's mine. Can't take no more. Wonder if you'll understand. Just a touch of your hand behind a closed door. All I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. All I ever knew, only you.
we go. Thank you.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Very nice. I like the backdrop as well of the elephants. That's awesome.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That's wow, that was not quite nice. What do you think, Andy?
That was great. It was really, I really enjoyed that.
I can't wait for some live events.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll tell you one thing is actually I've met, you know, so many musicians, and particularly over lockdown, how many musicians have had to figure out the tech to make it work. And I've even met musicians recently that didn't do much over lockdown, and I'm going, oh my goodness, you've missed out on something so special. And it's just wonderful. Your sound was really good, guys, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Michelle.
That was brilliant. I realized I've asked 2 questions to Joe and James. I've only asked 1 question to Tim and Vaughan, so I think we should ask them another question. And this one goes back to kind of the history of Yemen and Arde. I looked into it a bit. I mentioned earlier, it was Hermanus Pieterse, I think he came, because the English got a bit, or the South African, as we call them, the Boere, got a bit tired of being taught in English. So they imported teachers from Dutch and German, I think, teachers. And in 1815, Hermanus Pieterse landed in Cape Town, and he got onto an oxen wagon and he went down Caledon Way and started teaching at Boentjieskraal farm, which is quite a big farm. It's on the N2. I remember driving past, because going from Swellendam, you either go N1 or N2. And there's a lot of debate on which is better, obviously. But if you go on the N2, then you always talk about Boentjieskraal and the curse. There's a curse on the sons of Boentjieskraal. So then he started going from there to taking his flock down to the ocean, and he used to go through Yemen and Arde Valley, but it wasn't called that at the time. Do you know what it was called in kind of the 1820s, when the most of the settlers from England came as well? They called it something else.
No, we don't know, but the guy's name is Hermanus Pieterse, not, I think the Hermanus Pieterse. And actually the old cart track from Caledon to Hermanus came over where our vineyard is. It actually came through where our vineyard is.
Yeah, and that's Shaw's Mountain Pass.
Yeah, that's Shaw's Mountain Pass, where that is.
I don't know.
But I don't know what it was called. I know there was a leper colony down the road, and apparently that's where the word Hermanus and Arde came from. Someone said it was a leper lying on his bed, and he could feel the earth underneath him and see the heaven above. But whether that's
well, when I looked at it, they referred to it being called Yemen and Arde because when you're standing in the valley, all you can see is the mountain, and you on. So it's kind of that contrast.
But no, I don't know.
Tell us.
I don't know what it was called.
So it was called the Elephant's Pass.
Oh,
was it?
Yeah. Apparently, according to my source, Hermanus Online. And his name was Hermanus Pieterse, I'm sorry. And then it was called, they called Hermanus area, they called Hermanus Pieterse Fontein. Yes. And I think it was only in 1904 that the mayor of Hermanus decided, well, let's make this shorter, and he called it Hermanus. But obviously named after Hermanus Pieterse that came through the Yemen and Arde Valley. So, yeah.
Okay. No,
yeah, there were some very well-traveled Afrikaans people, and the British caused a lot of them to sort of migrate, and they've sort of ended up in places that they probably wouldn't have done ordinarily.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for teaching us.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story.
That's why we have Michelle. She's a guru in finding stuff out for when we need information.
I will say this: there are no elephants in the valley at the moment.
No.
Not
Well,
that
we
we've
were
seen.
discussing whether they were maybe related to the Neisner elephant, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know why they called it Elephant's Pass. It would be quite interesting to
Could
dig
be.
a little bit deeper.
Many years ago, pre Europeans, there were a lot of wild animals.
Yeah,
There are leopard. There are one
Occasionally.
or two occasional leopard.
Yeah.
Roy cats and certainly
Yeah.
baboons.
That could be
Many
a
baboons.
nice Seven Spring special label, that Elephant Pass label.
Well, I wonder actually if we've been beaten because Bouchard Finlayson actually have a wine called Hannibal.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's because of the combination of the varieties.
French varieties and
Italian.
Nebbiolo and Barbaresco from or Sangiovese from Italy, and I think some Syrah and some Sanso from France.
Yeah.
So it's Hannibal going across the Alps with his elephants.
Another very lovely wine, and Peter Finlayson, a very lovely man.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that is 2 questions to Tim and Vaughan, 1 question to Joe and James. So I think we need to catch up.
No, we've done 2 to
Have
Joe
we?
and James.
Oh,
Yeah, they were so quick on the second one, on the
Were they?
pinotage.
I am sorry. My
Yeah.
fault. I had a little bit of an internet hiccup there. These things happen in the UK as well. Okay, so it's 2-2. What was the second question, if I may ask, to Joe and James, Michelle?
Where does the name pinotage come from?
Okay.
And
Right.
Joe was very apt and quick in answering
That
it.
is true.
a true Cape Town man.
Yes.
So let's move on to question number 3.
Okay. So this is more a getting to know Joe and James. So just like pinotage was 2 grapes being kind of combined, what 2 instruments would you put together to form something new?
2 musical instruments to form
a new sound, or a new a innovative kind of, like pinotage was Hermitage and Pinot Noir. What would you put together?
What do you?
I think I'd pick my 2 favourite instruments, which would be guitar and saxophone.
Ooh, that would be an interesting sound. Yes.
Yeah, I would put together. I would probably combine an electric guitar and a cello, or a double bass. Sorry, double bass.
Interesting.
I could see 2 string instruments going together, but a wind and a string—that's a fascinating combination. So,
Just like a pinotage.
plus the 2 sounds,
Yeah.
amazing. Putting the 2 together into 1 instrument, man, that's
That's amazing. I'd love to hear those 2 actually.
And you'd call it a sax kit.
There we go. Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah,
work.
I do love guitar and cello, works phenomenal, and the wind instrument that I find very melodic and it works so well with storytelling events is the flute as well, or even simply the whistle. Saxophone is a very strong instrument, so I'd love to see how that would go with a storytelling event around a fire and some wine.
Well, I mean, we can make that wish come true, because there's a South African who lives in Bampton, a small town not far away. In fact, if you know Downton Abbey, they film a lot of Downton Abbey in that town. And I think he was a producer for, I've just forgotten the name, but she's a very well-known South African country singer. It's just, I'm approaching that age, but he's South African and he plays saxophone, and he's joined us at Christmas carols this last Christmas, where we were sitting in a sort of gazebo playing our songs, and he was filling in the back. So maybe at one of the live events we can get Gary, and his surname is Horn, which is ironic. So you can bring him along as well. Yeah,
Definitely, always.
It's a little bit like we had Tino Singer. He's a Zimbabwean Afrikaans singer.
Okay.
And his surname was Singer.
Yeah. Singwe.
Singer.
Yeah.
Do we have a final question for Tim and Vaughan, Michelle?
Final question for Tim and Vaughan, and this is also a little bit of a history. I'm so glad you guys enjoy those and know. So there is one station, one railway station in the world that has never seen a train arrive or leave. Where is this station, and would you know why?
Is it in South Africa by any chance?
Yes, it is in South Africa. Yeah.
Which station? God, we should have read it. I didn't know this was going to be a quiz.
We answer the musical instrument.
There is one in Elgin, well, Elgin,
that's
or Elgin,
definitely
that's a
got one.
station, but no, I don't know.
Oh, maybe it's come. No, maybe I was thinking about like a mining station somewhere.
No.
It's around the Yemen Valley, obviously, because that's where we
It's
are.
about 27 kilometers away.
27 kilometers exactly away from the Yemen. And it's never had a train arrive or leave that station. It is now, in fact, the tourist information.
Oh, tourist information office in Hermanus. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know when we know this, like, I didn't know that never had a train there.
Okay.
Yeah, so they built a station, and they were going to have the train running from Potrevier to Hermanus, but then I think it was the mayor that said they created a horse and carriage system instead, because they didn't want to pollute the fresh air, and therefore I don't think it even has tracks, does it, Gerard?
And it's got no tracks.
No tracks, nothing.
We were playing about maybe Joe getting this question with the tracks in their songs. Tracks.
Okay.
But there's no tracks, so it's just a station with no tracks and no trains. Yeah.
We know the building.
Yeah,
We've been in there a number of times.
Yeah, I think the mall is also called the Hermanus Railway Station Mall, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. It's never a straightforward quiz. We have questionings, quizzes. We don't totally know. We fire it out there, and we go with the flow. And time to wind down, isn't it, Andy? We just let it flow.
That's what happens after a few glasses.
Exactly. And that's time to wind down. Sitting around a fire, enjoying a glass of wine, telling a few stories, come up with some rubbish information or great information. So yeah, it's fantastic.
But we'll tell you one of the most beautiful routes to go back to Cape Town from our vineyard or from Hermanus, and that's past where your family are from, and that's through Kleinmond and going up through Betty's Bay and going
Royals.
Yeah,
Royals Bay. Yeah.
Royals to Gordon's Bay. It's the most beautiful coast road.
Yeah.
My dad was the forester looking after that strip of mountain strip there in forestry.
It's so beautiful.
And I think it's with Betty's Bay. If you look up, if it's Betty's Bay, you get the Elephant Rock.
You do.
Yeah.
And that's near Harold Porter Gardens that are there. We visit. Did we go twice this year?
Yeah, we go a couple of times. And
we love Harold Porter Gardens
walking up there.
Yeah. So I think that's where you can find a Diza that is still alive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Beautiful part of the country. But there you go. There's elephant stories, elephant past, elephant rock. It's all cool, and it's all how it's connected and how our people and how we all connect as human beings is fantastic. So I wouldn't have known you if it wasn't for my great grandfather made pinotage. So it's all somehow we're connecting, and it's fantastic, and that makes for a good story, don't you think, Andy?
Absolutely. And there's a wonderful story, because I am conscious that we've reached the end of our time to wind down today. But before we go, and before we say a big thank you to our guests that have joined us today, I think it's very important to help our audience, our listeners, find out how they can buy some bottles of the Seven Springs wines. So Gerard, what's the best way for someone to buy these wines?
Well, visit me. Or if you can't get to me, then we go online, and you go to perelwinecellar.co.uk, and we will put some links on, won't we, Michelle?
Absolutely.
And you can go and click on there. We'll have some special cases pre-order cases because our stock is running out and our new stock is coming soon. I'm just waiting for Tim to finish off the corking or the screw cap, and then we will have it soon.
I tell you, it's there. It's waiting.
There. It's waiting. Just the
whole-
logistics.
I'm afraid it's the logistics. Yes,
Yeah.
the Hillebrand, our wonderful shippers who are good, are a
Yes.
little bit slow.
Yes.
Give us
No,
time.
so it's
But it's a
on the
South
water.
African thing.
Yes.
African
Good.
time.
Good African time, and for good stuff you need to wait a little bit, but you can pre-order it already, and that way you can help Time to Wind Down getting some more storytelling and more guests and going with it really.
Yes,
So,
and
yeah.
whenever in doubt, go to www.perildwinecellar.co.uk/time to wind down, because
go.
it's all there as well. The case, this
Points.
case, and all the other ones that we love drinking.
Yeah, good.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. Tim and Vaughan, wonderful having you as our guests today from Seven Springs, the wonderful wine boutique farm, not estate. And Joe and James, Edenbay Acoustic, thank you again for joining us. And I know we are in discussions about you guys joining us for a live event. So very excited about that as well.
Thank you
So,
very much.
and to you, the listeners, thank you for listening to this. And like Michelle said, if you want to get in contact with us, just follow the links in the description of this video. And we look forward to hearing from you. And please do join our mailing list as well. So it's bye-bye from me, Andy Cops.
Me, Michelle
Bye-bye.
Cheen.
From Gerard Perelt.
And Tim and Vaughan and Joe and James, thank you so much again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.